Today brings with it yet more coverage of the Xbox Scorpio, as we have a few more details surface on the hardware. And of course, we've learned a lot about how the Xbox Scorpio was designed with the software in mind, and also to deliberately look at the Xbox One and try and fill in the gaps of its weaknesses and improve upon the hardware, while of course still making it possible to run games on both systems. Now, there were some comments today from the technical fellow over at Microsoft, Andrew Goosen, who said that at the core of Scorpio's design was the basic principle to minimize the amount of work the developer needed to do to actually make use of the power available within Xbox Scorpio. And he said, quote, "This is reflected in everything. You'll see it in the developer kit we give to developers. You'll see it in terms of the performance goals. We want to make it easy as possible for developers to show the ultimate true 4K quality. The other guiding principle was to minimize the work in terms of features. We didn't want developers to go and take advantage of some quirky new console-specific hardware feature to get that performance. Our guiding principles were around making it easy as possible for developers to showcase and exhibit the performance and power of Scorpio." Now, he went so far as to say that at least some of the current Xbox One games that run at 900p should be running absolutely fine at 4K with a day one patch, but obviously, as with any game really and any port, some games will need more work, and of course your mileage may vary. Obviously, we've seen some comments from Turn 10 recently regarding Forza 6 Apex, that the game was very, very easy to port over from the PC to the Xbox Scorpio. But of course, as we've seen with other games, there will be some games that are a bit more difficult. However, it is definitely a good principle to have, to think, okay, how can we make developers' lives that much easier? Because, well, obviously it benefits the Scorpio to have as many games as possible saying, hey, we run at 4K, or hey, we run at 60 FPS, or in some cases both, obviously. However, his comments do actually continue, as he said, quote, "We wanted native 1080p Xbox One games to run at full native 4K with a rock-solid frame rate, with a whole bunch of performance left over to showcase and actually improve the visual experience in other ways beyond render resolution. And then our other goal was that we wanted to get 900p games up to full native 4K. That's a little bit harder. Some of the 900p games, day one ports, they should be running fine, solid at 2160p. For other games, it's going to be more work than you would traditionally do in terms of console optimization, but we want to get those 960p games at 2160p. For the very small handful of titles that run at 720p today, our expectation is that they can checkerboard up to native 4K if they want to do that." And of course, there's that word again, checkerboard rendering, but obviously that is for 720p titles. Obviously, it is harder to upscale to lower the starting resolution. Makes perfect sense. However, he continues, quote, "I also expect variations of titles that are perhaps running at 900p at 30 FPS on Xbox One today, that they can leverage the 31% boost to CPU clock, along with a bunch of other optimizations in conjunction with our DirectX 12 offload to potentially offer 1080p 60 rather than 900p 30. It's totally up to developers. In terms of the panoply of implementations we're going to see for Xbox Scorpio native games, I expect quite a range. I wouldn't be surprised to see games running at 1080p on Xbox One. They might use checkerboard, and then they use the remaining GPU to really impact visual quality." So again, this thing of leaving it up to developers, that is something we have heard from Microsoft before we obviously got the official look at the Scorpio. There have been several comments from people, including of course Phil Spencer, to basically hint at the fact that Microsoft is leaving it in the hands of developers what they do with this power. You know, personally, I've always said, like, I wish the Pro had pushed more towards frame rate rather than 4K, because I think that would actually be much better for console gamers to be able to choose to have more frames if they so desire, and having the option to choose in a lot of games, I think, is definitely something that console gaming is missing. You know, I keep bringing this example up, but just for example, Bloodborne, if I was given the option to run that at 60 but at lower resolution, I totally would. And of course, if we see Xbox Scorpio enabling games at perhaps 900p to run at 1080p 60 or what have you, then that is a huge boost from 900p 30, because To be honest, frame rate to me is a bit more important than raw resolution. Obviously, it's great to have both if you can get it, but if I had to choose between the two, again, it would be frame rate, and I just like that they're giving developers the choice, and hopefully we see some implementation on Scorpio from developers like we saw with Rise of the Tomb Raider on the Pro, where they did offer players the choice of whether or not they wanted more frames or a higher resolution, or even if they don't, it still would be nice. It still is nice, rather, to see Microsoft leaving the power in the hands of the developers and letting them choose on a game-by-game basis. Now, he also said that for games that will be making use of checkerboard rendering, apparently they're going to have some hardware techniques within the Project Scorpio to make said checkerboard rendering very efficient, although some developers are apparently wanting to use temporal anti-aliasing combined with upscaling instead of checkerboard rendering, but it still is nice to see efficiency as well for those few who will be making use of checkerboard rendering. Now, I'm fairly certain that this efficiency with checkerboard rendering is something present in the Pro, so obviously it's fairly important that the Xbox Scorpio has it, but it still is nice to see nonetheless. Now, I just want to reiterate again that Paul will be doing a full tech analysis of the Scorpio, but we are learning new information about the console from Digital Foundry every few days, and more information obviously helps us get a more complete picture, and obviously it would be remiss of us to do analysis without all the information, so unfortunately you're just going to have to wait and see. As to when that will happen, I cannot say. Unfortunately, my crystal ball is, as always, missing in action, but still, this extra little tidbits regarding the Scorpio is definitely making the system sound very well thought out from the ground up. And of course, how effective this was, well, we're going to have to wait and see until it's actually in the hands of developers who can then talk about it with us. But I definitely look forward to seeing comments from developers as to how easy the Scorpio is to work with, because obviously that's going to be a big factor in people deciding whether or not they want to actually bother with the whole Xbox Scorpio thing. So, as always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Your support is highly appreciated, and I'll see you next time.